When people talk about homestay, they often describe it as a home away from home, a place where you can experience local culture, improve your English, and live with a local family instead of living alone. But homestay also means living inside someone else's house, following their rules, and sharing daily life with people who were strangers before you arrived. So the question is homestay really a second home, or is it just another place to stay? Hi, I'm YUFORM. I'm an international student studying in Australia, and today I want to share my homestay experience. For many international students, choosing accommodation is one of the first big decisions after arriving in a new country. The most common options are student apartments, renting a house, or staying in a homestay with a local family. Each option offers a different lifestyle. Student apartments give you independency and social life with other students. Renting a house gives you more privacy and freedom. Homestay, on the other hand, offer meals, a family environment, and a chance to experience local culture more closely. Because of this, homestay is often recommended, especially for younger students or students who are new to the country. It sounds safe, supportive, and comfortable. Sometimes people even describe it as having a second family. But what homestay looks like on paper and what homestay feel like in real life can be very different. Before I moved into the homestay, I have a very clear idea of what I thought it would be like. I chose homestay because I wanted to improve my English, adapt to the culture faster, and build a relationship with local people. I thought living with a host family could be very different from living alone in an apartment. I imagined we would talk during dinner, maybe share story, and I would slowly become more familiar with the local lifestyle. I also like the idea what it might feel like a second home. When you arrive in a new country alone for the first time, everything is new. The environment, the transport, the school, the people. So I thought homestay would give me some support and make the transition easier. And to be honest, there was another small reason. The homestay had a cat. At that time, that was actually a big reason why I chose this place. So before I arrived, I had a pretty positive image of what homestay would be like. I still remember the first day I arrived. I got off the plane, took a taxi to the house, and everything felt new and exciting. When I arrived, one of the hosts welcomed me and showed me around the house. The house was quite large, with several rooms, one for me, one for another international student named Mike, one bedroom for the host, and another room that was used as a gaming room. I also met the cat Apollo on the first day. To be honest, Apollo later became one of my favorite parts of the whole homestay experience. Sometimes when things were stressful or uncomfortable, I would just sit there and play with the cat. Later that day, the host explained the house rule to me. Things like the door password, always closing the door because of the pet, cleaning rules, and general house rules. I also met Mike, the other international student who was already living there, and we quickly became good friends. We had similar backgrounds and were both new to the environment, so we often talked and helped each other. So the first day was actually quite normal. Nothing dramatic happened. I thought my homestay life would probably go quite smoothly. After the first few days, I slowly settled down into a routine. I learned how to take bus to school, where the supermarket was, and how daily life worked in the house. The house was quite far from the city. Nearby there was only a supermarket and a few small food shops. and most places were quite far away by walking. So most of the time after school, I would just go back to the house. I think the location also affected my experience because the house was not just where I slept, it became the place where I spent most of my time. Life was actually quite simple at the time: school during the day, dinner in the evening, and a study in my room. On weekends, sometimes I stayed home, sometimes I went out with friends. At that stage, everything felt quite normal. I was adapting to the new environment, and I thought this would probably be my life for the next few months. Nothing was perfect, but nothing was really wrong either. Looking back now, that was probably the most peaceful period of my homestay. After the first few weeks, homestay slowly became part of my daily routine. Every day I went to school, took the bus home, and dinner was usually in the evening. Dinner was the main time we interacted with the host. We would sit at the table together and talk about our day. At the beginning, I actually liked this arrangement because it felt structured and stable. But after some times, I started to feel tired during dinner conversations. After a full day of school and study, sometimes I just wanted to eat quietly and go back to my room to rest or finish my work. Later, I received a complaint through the Homestay network saying that I didn't talk enough during dinner and used my phone too much. I was quite surprised because I didn't think I was being rude. I just wasn't very talkative and I was often tired from school and tests. There were also many house rules, things like shower time, laundry time, lights, noise, and kitchen use. Most of these rules sound reasonable at the beginning, and I tried to follow them carefully, but over time, these small rules slowly became small sources of stress. None of these were big problems by themselves, but when many small things happen again and again, you slowly start to feel uncomfortable without knowing exactly why. After a while, I realized there's something strange. When I was on the way home from school, sometimes I didn't really want to go back into the house, not because something terrible happened, but because I didn't feel completely relaxed there. As time went on, the small problems slowly became more noticeable. Sometimes I received the complaint messages through the Homestay network about things like shower time, cleaning, or behavior during dinner. Receiving those messages was quite stressful, especially when I was already busy with study and tests. Over time, I started to feel like I had to be very careful all the time, careful about noise, lights, laundry, shower time, and even small things. It slowly felt less like living in a house and more like trying not to make mistakes. Around that time, Mike and I started talking more seriously about moving out and finding another place to live. I think the turning point for me was when I realized that when I was on the way home from school, I didn't feel relaxed. Instead, I felt a bit of pressure. Maybe this place was not really suitable for me, and maybe it was time to move on. Mike and I started to seriously think about moving out. He had suggested moving earlier, but at the time I thought the situation was still manageable and moving would be troublesome. But after more time passed and more small problems happened I suddenly felt more tiring mentally. It was not one big event, but many things combined together. Eventually, we decided that it would be better to find another place to live. We started looking for accommodation, but it was not easy. We were rejected several times, and it took some time before we finally find a place. I remember buying a suitcase and slowly preparing to move. The atmosphere in the house felt a bit awkward. because I think the host realized that we were prepared to leave. Eventually, we informed the Homestay network and arranged the moving day. I didn't feel angry or sad anymore. I just felt tired and want to move out. I still remember the last day quite clearly. I had already moved some of my things earlier, but on the final day, I still had a suitcase and a piano chair to move. That night, I carried up my luggage and the piano chair and walked towards the bus stop. I remember that moment very clearly. I wasn't angry and I wasn't sad. I just felt relieved. It felt like I finished a chapter of my life and I was ready to move on to the next one. Looking back now, I don't think my homestay experience was simply good or bad. It was just an experience, a period of time where I lived in someone else's house and learned that how difficult it can be for different people to live in the same space. Before I arrived, I thought homestay might feel like a second home, but later I realized that homestay is not really family, and it is not really like renting with friends either. It is something in between. You living in someone else's home, under their system, and whether it works depends a lot on expectation from both sides. I also realized there's something about myself. I tend to avoid conflict and try to keep harmony. So when I was uncomfortable, I often didn't say anything and just tried to adopt. I think if I communicated my boundaries more clearly earlier, maybe something would have been different. But at the same time, I also learned that when different people with different lifestyle and expectation live together, conflicts are almost unavoidable. Sometimes people are just different. I also gained something important from that period. I became more independent, and I learned more about what kind of living environment suits me. And of course, I also met Mike, and we became good friends and later moved out together. And I will probably always remember Apollo, the cat who made that period a bit easier. So in the end, I don't regret doing homestay. It was not always comfortable, but it was an important experience, and I learned a lot from it. So, if you are an international student considering homestay, I think it can be a good option, especially if you're new to the country or want some support when you first arrive. But it is important to remember that homestay is not hotel and not your own house. You're living in someone else's home, and that means you will need to adapt to their lifestyle and their rules. For me, homestay was not the home I expected, but it was still an important part of my journey. I'm Yuform. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.